Well, this holiday season, like any holiday season, is time for making lists. So today, I would like to offer one of my own. These are just some of the things that the 114th Congress has achieved for the American people. The first real entitlement reform in nearly 2 decades. The first long-term highway bill in more than a decade. The biggest rewrite of our education laws in 15 years. The first permanent ban on taxing access to the internet. A law to better judge policy-based evidence instead of just inputs, something I worked on. New sanctions packages for both North Korea and Iran. A strengthened visa waiver program to keep Americans safe. The end of the 40-year ban on exporting crude oil. Permanent renewal of tax relief for small businesses and families. Renewal of trade promotion authority to get better deals for America's workers. The first rewrite of our nation's trade enforcement laws in a generation. FOIA reforms to make government more open and more transparent. Reforms to fight human trafficking and to expand services for its victims. A Bill of Rights for the survivors of sexual assault. Reforms to help our veterans, including the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention for Americans Veterans Act. Reforms to level the playing field for American manufacturers. A law to prevent a taxpayer bailout of Puerto Rico and allow the island to retake control of its future. Resources to tackle the Zika virus. Landmark legislation to combat opioid addiction and to support long-term recovery. Landmark legislation to accelerate the development of cures of rare diseases, as well as the most significant mental health reform in more than a decade. And when our defense bill becomes law, as it's about to, our troops will see their biggest pay raise in 6 years. My predecessor, John Boehner, was a big part of that work, of course. He used to say that about 90% of what we do around here is bipartisan. The other 10% gets all the attention. Bipartisanship is not rare, it is just rarely noted. On that note, I'd be happy to take your questions. Erica.
Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump, in comments that were published in Time Magazine, talked about dreamers. He said, we're going to work something out that's going to make people happy and proud. What would you like to see him work out?
I will work that out with the Trump administration. I would defer you to the Judiciary Committee, which is in charge of that. I'm sure the Judiciary Committee is working with the Trump administration, the transition team on these things. I'd refer you to those guys. Manu.
You said in comments this week that a replacement for Obamacare may not come until next football season. Are you concerned, though, if a repeal takes effect early next year, it could throw the system into chaos, prompt insurers?
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make on 60 Minutes, I think is what you're talking about, which is there needs to be a reasonable transition period so that people don't have the rug pulled out from under them. And so that's the point we're trying to make here, which is there clearly will need to be a transition period so that people will not have that rug pulled out from under them that you're talking about. That's obviously something that we intend on doing.
How quickly will you move on a replacement next year?
We'll get to that next year. We're going to work with we just had a meeting with all our authorizers this morning about working on this with the Senate and the transition team. Those talks are ongoing.
Gary Naden with Fox News. President-elect Trump has asked for a call for a 35% tariff on companies going overseas. Is this something you've talked to him about?
I think we just had this question on Tuesday. We believe that the best way to get at this issue is through comprehensive tax reform. So what he's trying to get at is making American businesses more competitive and making it more likely that American businesses stay in America, manufacture in America, and sell things overseas. We believe the best way to solve that very important goal is comprehensive tax reform. You go over here. Christina.
On the ACA, many House Republicans are saying it would be unfair to have that transition period last more than 2 years because it would push that problem to the next Congress. Do you agree with that, or do you think it could take longer?
We're going to have these kinds of conversations. I don't have an opinion on exactly what that timeline will be. There's a lot of moving parts, and we have a lot of dialogue that we have to have with just our friends in the Senate and with the White House on the transition. So it's just premature to suggest that we know exactly how long this transition is. Here's what I know. Obamacare is hurting people. We are seeing consistent double-digit premium increases, huge deductible increases, and the insurers are pulling out. The largest health insurance company in America, United, pulled out of Obamacare. Aetna pulled out of Obamacare. People don't have choices. If you have just one option, that's a monopoly, that's not a choice. And so people are getting stuck with monopolies, double-digit premium increases, massive deductible increases. They're not picking their plans, they're not picking their doctors. It isn't working. And the actuaries are telling us this thing is in what they call a death spiral. So we have to bring relief to Obamacare as quickly as possible so that it stops doing damage, not just to the healthcare system, but to the families of America who need affordable health insurance. So that is why we're going to do it as well and as fast as we can, but make sure that the transition does not pull the rug out from under people. Yeah. Oh, behind you. Carrie, then Casey, all right.
There is a concern right now that with the Republicans getting both chambers along with the White House into the next Congress, that perhaps Republicans might be eventually overspending into more bleeding heart causes, and perhaps that Democrats may take advantage of that and going into more of a 2005, 2006 mentality, and going into they're spending like drunken sailors.
Not in the least. This is what our spring budget will have to deal with. Of course, we're going to do a very quick budget dealing with Obamacare, which is in January. But then our spring budget will deal with this. We see the fact that we were given this opportunity to have unified government as a way to get this country back on track, and that includes getting our nation's finances back on track. Casey.
Speaker, the president-elect has been going back and forth with a local union leader in Indiana, Chuck Jones, over this carrier deal, criticizing him directly. Chuck Jones says, hey, I'm standing up for the workers that I represent. In your home state, local union heads have played a pretty important role for some workers. I'm just wondering, what's your view of the role that those people play, and should the president-elect be going after these people?
It's the first I've heard of this, so I can't really speak to Chuck. Yeah, I've not heard about this until just now. So local union leaders are very important parts of our communities. I work with them at home in Wisconsin quite a bit, but I can't really speak to the rest of it because I'm not really sure what you're talking about.
Last question. Sir, to follow up on my colleague's question about DACA, I know you said that's for the Judiciary Committee. What is your personal view of that policy?
Well, I think we should have something that balances the concerns of all parties involved and make sure that we don't pull the rug out from under people. I guess that's a phrase I'm going to use a lot these days. But I think the Judiciary Committee is more on top of exactly how the timing of this works. And the transition team, I think, wants to make sure that they get this right. So I will defer to the people who are focused on this on a daily basis to make sure that they get this policy right so that we don't have any kind of ugly disruption that people are concerned about. Thank you very much. Oh, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. Enjoy the season, guys. Take care.